Imagine tearing open the walls of your ancestral home, only to find 7 solemn faces staring back from the shadows of 1872. Their eyes, etched with unspoken sins, whisper a curse. They know what happened. But what divine retribution had your bloodline buried? One woman's discovery unearths a legacy of guilt that could shatter souls or redeem them. In the sultry haze of Charleston, South Carolina, spring 1952 clung to the air like a reluctant ghost, heavy with the scent of blooming magnolias and the faint, salty whisper of the Atlantic breeze. The city was a tapestry of fading grandeur, cobblestone streets lined with antebellum mansions, their wrought iron gates rusted from years of neglect, standing sentinel over secrets long whispered in drawing rooms. Horse-drawn carriages still clopped alongside shiny new Fords, and the old oaks draped in Spanish moss swayed like silent judges over the living. It was a place where the past didn't just linger, it clawed its way into the present, demanding reckoning. Margaret Howell, a woman of 41 whose life had been sculpted by loss and quiet resolve, embodied this uneasy bridge between eras. Her husband, taken by the war's cruel arithmetic in 1944, had left her a widow teaching 5th-grade history in a sunlit classroom where she preached the virtues of truth and progress. Practical to her core, with calloused hands from grading papers and a gaze sharpened by grief, she inherited the narrow townhouse on King Street, a 3-story sentinel of faded yellow clapboard, black shutters framing windows like watchful eyes. It had passed from her grandmother, Constance Howell, who died in 1948, a reclusive figure shrouded in Victorian propriety. For 4 years, Margaret had let the house slumber untouched, its rooms echoing with the ghosts of her own mourning. But now, in the bloom of 52, she craved renewal, a purging of the stale air that smelled of mothballs and unspoken regrets. The townhouse loomed like a relic from a bygone sermon, its facade cracked by time's relentless sermon on decay. Inside, the air was thick, almost sacramental, dust motes dancing in slivers of light that pierced the heavy velvet curtains, casting shadows that twisted like fingers of accusation. Victorian furniture squatted heavily, mahogany sideboards burdened with porcelain angels, their painted eyes vacant yet piercing, leather-bound Bibles gathering dust on shelves, their pages yellowed like aged confessions, daguerreotypes of stern ancestors glaring from ornate frames, their expressions frozen in eternal judgment. Walking its creaking floors felt like trespassing in a confessional, where every groan of wood whispered sins unabsolved. Constance had ruled this domain from 1905 onward, a widow herself, changing nothing as if preserving a sacred vigil. The bedroom at the rear, overlooking a courtyard choked with overgrown camellias, their petals blood-red against tangled vines, measured a modest 12 by 14 feet. High ceilings amplified the silence, broken only by the distant hum of city life. Dark green wallpaper, faded to a bilious olive, peeled like shedding skin, revealing water-stained paneling below, warped as if swollen with hidden tears. A single window, framed by lace curtains yellowed like old parchment, filtered light into a dim, sepia glow, evoking the haze of forgotten prayers. Margaret's decision to renovate was an act of defiance against this stagnation, a bid for light in a life shadowed by loss. She enlisted Robert Fletcher, a burly contractor with calloused hands and a drawl thick as molasses, and his young assistant, Danny, whose boyish enthusiasm masked a war veteran's haunted eyes. They began on a crisp Monday in early April, hammers echoing like thunderclaps in the empty house. Margaret was at school, her voice steady as she lectured on Reconstruction, ironic, now, in hindsight, when the phone jangled during lunch. Robert's voice crackled over the line, laced with unease, like a man who'd stumbled upon forbidden fruit. "Mrs. Howell, you'd best come home quick," he said, his words measured, heavy. "We've found something in the wall." Her heart stuttered. A termite infestation? Structural rot symbolizing deeper decay? She drove the sun-dappled streets, palms slick on the wheel, the radio's jazz a discordant underscore to her mounting dread. Arriving, she found Robert in the foyer, cradling a leather pouch like a relic from a grave. Ancient, cracked as parched earth, it exuded the faint must of buried time. "Behind the paneling," he explained, leading her upstairs, his boots thumping like a dirge. The bedroom yawned open, stripped bare, paneling pried away in jagged strips, exposing horsehair plaster cracked like a fractured soul. At shoulder height, a cavity gaped 8 inches wide, 10 deep, carved deliberately between studs, sealed with plaster that had aged into invisibility, a testament to meticulous concealment. Margaret's fingers, trembling with an unnameable anticipation, unclasped the tarnished brass. Inside, a sepia photograph on thick cardboard, its edges frayed like whispered vows. Beneath, a folded receipt and a letter, paper brittle as autumn leaves. The image arrested her, 7 figures arrayed before a weathered wooden church, its steeple piercing a cloudy sky like a finger pointing heavenward. Taken in 1872, per the embossed gold, Thomas J. Waring, Portraits and Daguerreotypes, 127, Meeting Street, Charleston, South Carolina. They were black, 4 men, 3 women clad in Sunday best, ill-fitting coats on the men, high-collared dresses on the women, fabrics starched stiff against the wind. Their postures rigid, faces solemn under long exposures, but oh, the eyes intense, watchful, burning with a fire that transcended time. The tall man on the left, graying temples etched with trials, a woman beside him, round-faced, gazing straight through the lens as if accusing the viewer across decades. Broad-shouldered youth, hands clasped in prayerful restraint, a slight woman, spine straight as justice deferred, an elder with white beard, wise and weary, a girl barely grown, hair pulled taut, innocence shadowed, and the last man, middle-aged, his expression haunted, as if bearing the weight of unconfessed sins. Turning it over, Margaret's breath caught. In Constance's elegant script, faded ink proclaimed, "They know what happened." 3 words, cryptic as a biblical omen, chilling as divine whisper. What happened? What knowledge did these faces hold, sealed away like a curse? Robert shifted, his voice low. "You recognize ma'am?" She shook her head, the room spinning slightly. "No, never seen this before." Unfolding the receipt, received from Reverend S. Tilden, the sum of $3 for 1 photographic portrait, 7 subjects, with mounting. Paid in full. April 23, 1872. A minister's commission. Why? For what purpose? And the letter, dated May 15, 1872, in a different hand, elegant, feminine. "My dear Constance, I write in strictest confidence, trusting your absolute discretion. You inquired of the matter's resolution. I delayed, hoping time might dull its edge, but truth demands utterance. The inquiry is closed. No charges forthcoming. The sheriff deems evidence insufficient against the 7's claims. It ends here. This wounds us both, for we know your father's deathbed confession rings true. Those allegations were no fabrications. Yet proof eludes in war's chaos, on lands altered, testimonies undervalued by color's unjust scale. These 7 braved peril to speak, courage unmet with reward. I've urged silence for safety's sake. Some flee, others cower. Public words from you would ruin all your name, legacy, for naught. Father gone, property sold, war fated. Gaze forward. But preserve a record, as you wish. This photograph of those who dared attests their existence, their attempt. Someday, in a juster world, it may unveil truth. Until then, safeguard it, pray for the afflicted's peace. Your faithful Eleanor. Margaret read it thrice, each pass a hammer to her soul. Her great-grandfather, Charles Howell, implicated in unspecified horrors, wartime atrocities? The 7, witnesses to sin, their voices silenced by Reconstruction's fragile justice. Constance, young then, had hidden this artifact, a silent testament to guilt's inheritance. The room's shadows lengthened, the courtyard's jasmine scent turning cloying, like incense at a funeral. Outside, King Street buzzed, cars honking, pedestrians chattering, but here, time folded, sins of the fathers pressing like a yoke. A spiritual tremor seized her. Was this divine retribution, unearthing buried iniquity? Biblical echoes resounded, Numbers 32:23, "Be sure your sin will find you out." Guilt's legacy, a serpent in the family tree, demanding atonement. Empathy swelled for the 7, their solemnity now read as quiet defiance, eyes pleading for justice denied. Dread coiled, what if this revelation shattered her world? Curiosity burned, a holy fire, reflection deepened, pondering redemption's path. She couldn't ignore it. Phoning her mother-in-law, Sarah, 83 and sharp as a thorn, yielded little. Constance was private, dear. No whispers of inquiries or Eleanor's I recall. Disappointing, yet fuel for Margaret's resolve. As a teacher, she thrived on inquiry. This was her personal crusade. Next day, post-school, she ventured to the Charleston Historical Society, a grand mansion turned archive, its halls echoing with rustling papers and the faint vanilla of old books. Dorothy Simmons, the bespectacled librarian, a font of local lore, lit up at Thomas J. Waring's name. Prolific in Reconstruction, ledgers intact. She produced a tome, Pages Whispering Secrets. April 23, 1872, Reverend Samuel Tilden, group portrait, 7 subjects, outdoor, Mount Pleasant Church, $3 paid. Mount Pleasant Church a freedmen's sanctuary, perhaps? Dorothy mused, post-war, black communities built such havens. Records spotty fires, floods, deliberate erasures. Delving deeper, Freedmen's Bureau archives yielded gold, March 1870 entry Reverend Samuel Tilden, minister, Mount Pleasant African Methodist Episcopal Church, rural Charleston outskirts. Serving congregation of former enslaved, advocating education, land rights. Margaret's pulse thrummed. Tilden, a shepherd for the oppressed, commissioning this image as proof against injustice. The church, likely wooden, humbled boards weathered by Carolina rains, pews hand-hewn, air thick with hymns of liberation. Imagining the 7 there, gathering under that steeple, faces set against the wind, capturing their testimony before silence descended. But what allegations? War's chaos hinted at horrors, plantations like the Howells, where Charles presided during the Civil War. Rumors of atrocities, enslaved beaten, families torn, lands scorched in Sherman's wake. Perhaps worse, murders veiled as wartime necessity, bodies buried in unmarked graves, sins absolved by victors' amnesia. Expanding her search, Margaret pored over census rolls, yellowed newspapers microfilmed in flickering light. 1870 census, Charles Howell, planter, vast holdings pre-war, reduced post-emancipation. Death 1871, natural causes, but whispers in margins, confession to daughter Constance. Eleanor, perhaps Eleanor Caldwell, a society friend listed in old directories, deceased 1890s. Piece by piece, a mosaic emerged, 1872, Reconstruction's peak, fragile alliances fracturing. 7 former enslaved from Howell lands step forward accusing Charles of wartime killings, theft of freedoms promised. Inquiry opens amid tension, white backlash brewing, clan shadows lengthening. Sheriff, sympathetic to old order, quashes it, no evidence, testimonies dismissed as colored exaggeration. Tilden's role, rallying them, funding the photo as eternal witness. They know what happened, Constance's note, a lament for buried truth, a prayer for future unveiling. Margaret's evenings blurred into obsession, lamplight casting long shadows as she transcribed notes, the house's creaks now ominous warnings. Sensory immersion deepened her dread, the leather pouches crackle, ink's faint iron tang, faces gazes piercing like accusatory spirits. Spiritually, it haunted, sin's inheritance, Romans 6:23's wages of sin is death. Was her family's prosperity built on blood? Redemption beckoned, expose or bury? Empathy for the 7 grew, their courage, a David against Goliath, unrewarded yet resonant. Venturing rural, she sought Mount Pleasant's remnants, overgrown foundation stones amid pines, winds sighing like ghosts. Locals, descendants perhaps, shared oral tales, Tilden's flock spoke truth, but silence bought safety. One elder, eyes milky with age, murmured, those 7? Carried the cross of knowing. Divine justice comes slow, but sure. 3 years unfolded thus, archives yielding fragments, letters hinting at Howell's confessions, in war's madness, I took lives to save my own. Psychological torment, guilt's erosion, a soul's slow crucifixion. Margaret's narration would weave this pauses for breath, rhythmic flow evoking oral tradition. Climax neared, piecing it, Margaret faced the dilemma. Expose, risking scandal, or hide, perpetuating silence? Choosing the latter, she resealed the pouch, adding her letter, for a time when justice prevails, and sins are washed clean. Yet the legacy chilled, divine retribution's whisper, haunting generations. Viewers, immersed, would feel the dread, curiosity piquing, what sins? What redemption? This revelation wasn't mere history, it was a spiritual mirror, forcing reflection on inherited guilt, the pursuit of truth as sacred duty. In Charleston's twilight, Margaret walked streets anew, shadows longer, air heavier with unspoken prayers. The past, unburied, demanded its due, a tale of sin, silence, and the slow dawn of justice. The sun dipped low over Charleston's historic spires, casting elongated shadows that stretched like accusing fingers across the cobblestone streets. It was late afternoon in the spring of 1952, the air thick with the mingled scents of blooming azaleas and the distant tang of harbor salt, a reminder that this city, for all its genteel facade, was built on waters that had carried chains and cries. Margaret Howell, her mind a whirlwind of unearthed secrets, stepped out from the Charleston Historical Society, the weight of Reverend Samuel Tilden's name pressing on her like a biblical scroll. Mount Pleasant African Methodist Episcopal Church perched 18 miles west, near the ghosts of Fairmont Plantation. Her family's Fairmont. The name evoked faded daguerreotypes of grand columns in sprawling fields, but now it whispered of deeper, darker soils, turned over by enslaved hands and stained with unconfessed sins. Dorothy Simmons, the librarian with her wire-rimmed glasses perched like a sentinel on her nose, had eyed Margaret with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Fairmont was your kin's, wasn't it?" she'd asked, her voice low, as if the walls themselves might eavesdrop. The ledger's ink, faded yet indelible, confirmed it, a congregation of 40 families, souls freed from bondage but bound by memory, gathering under a simple wooden steeple where hymns rose like incense, pleading for deliverance. Margaret's pulse had quickened, a spiritual tremor, Psalm 37 verse 28 echoing in her mind, "For the Lord loves justice, he will not forsake his faithful ones." But what justice had been forsaken here? The 7 faces from the photograph stared back in her imagination, their solemn gazes a silent indictment, as if urging her to peel back the layers of her bloodline's buried guilt. "Yes," Margaret had replied, her voice steady despite the inner quake. "Sold in '69. I've never set foot there, didn't think there was reason to." But now, reason clawed at her, a divine imperative to confront the inheritance of sin. Dorothy's gaze lingered, heavy with unspoken history. "Margaret, tread carefully. Reconstruction, it was a crucible. Wounds festered in silence, truths twisted into oblivion. Families like yours, old blood, they guarded reputations like sacred relics." The words hung in the air, thick as the dust mote swirling in the archive's dim light, filtered through high windows streaked with grime. Margaret met her eyes, resolve hardening like clay in fire. "I must know. Whatever shadows lurk, they demand light." Dorothy nodded, a reluctant blessing. "Then seek the sheriff's ledgers at the courthouse. If an inquiry breathed, its ghost lingers there." The Charleston County Courthouse loomed on Broad Street like a temple of earthly judgment, its white columns gleaming under the westering sun, marble steps worn smooth by countless feet seeking redress or evasion. Margaret had passed it innumerable times, its facade a postcard of Southern dignity, but never crossed its threshold. Now, the next afternoon, school bells still echoing in her ears from dismissing her class, she ascended those steps, each one a rung toward revelation. The clerk, an elderly man with a face etched like old leather and eyes dulled by routine, led her to the basement archives, a cavernous room where fluorescent bulbs buzzed faintly, casting a pallid glow over metal shelves groaning under boxes of forgotten fates. The air was musty, redolent of mildew and aged paper, a sensory shroud that evoked tombs more than records. "Inquiries, 1872, she requested, her voice echoing slightly off the concrete walls. He hauled down the box, dust puffing like exhaled breath from a grave. Inside, folders thin as confessions, thefts, boundary squabbles, minor vendettas. Margaret sifted through them methodically, her teacher's precision guiding her, short sentences in her notes, pauses to absorb. Then, near the bottom, like a hidden thorn, Inquiry Re, Fairmont Estate, April 1872. The file was sparse, 3 pages of precise script, ink browned by time but sharp in accusation. County of Charleston, South Carolina. Inquiry opened April 10, 1872. Allegations by 7 individuals concerning treatment at Fairmont Estate, 1863 to 1865. Names listed: Benjamin Cook, 34, laborer; Mary Cook, 31, domestic; Elias Grant, 42, laborer; Susanna Gray, 28, domestic; Thomas Perry, 50, laborer; Rachel Perry, 22, domestic; Samuel Porter, 38, laborer. Margaret's fingers trembled on the page, the paper crackling like dry bones. These were the 7, flesh to the sepia ghosts. Their claims: knowledge of unlawful confinement and resulting deaths of 3, Marcus, 30, Joseph, 25, Dinah, 35. Locked in an underground cellar. 4, attempted desertion in January-February 1865, as Sherman's march scorched the land, panic gripping the Confederacy like a vice. The narrative unfolded in clinical detachment. Charles Howell, fleeing Union advance, abandoned the property, leaving the 3 to perish in darkness. Upon return, he discovered their remains, disposed of them secretly, erased the site. Margaret's breath hitched, a wave of nausea rising. Sensory visions assaulted her, the cellar's dank chill, earthen walls slick with moisture, chains rattling faintly in the black void, muffled cries echoing unheard as starvation gnawed, thirst burned like hellfire. Spiritual horror deepened. Exodus 21:16's condemnation of man stealing, amplified to murder by neglect. Was this her great-grandfather's sin? A man of good character, per family lore, now revealed as a vessel of divine wrath's target. She pressed on. Sheriff James Rutherford's investigation, April 15, site visited, altered beyond recognition. Main house stood, but outbuildings razed or ruined. No cellar trace. Henry Davidson, 1869 purchaser, attested, structures dismantled, materials burned or buried. Testimonies from Louisa Howell, widow, and Constance, daughter denial absolute, allegations malicious falsehoods. Margaret's stomach churned, her grandmother, young Constance, complicit in the veil. The conclusion, lack of evidence, passage of time, accused deceased. Inquiry closed May 3, 1872. No charges. She slumped in the chair, the basement's chill seeping into her bones, fluorescent hum a mocking dirge. Why hide the photo if baseless? Because truth festered beneath. Charles's deathbed confession to Constance, guilt's poison seeping through generations. They know what happened, a cryptic epitaph, a plea for redemption denied. Empathy surged for the seven, their courage a Davidic sling against Goliath's silence, rewarded with dismissal. Dread coiled, her lineage tainted by blood, divine justice's sword hanging by a thread. Emerging into broad streets' warmth, sunlight blinded her, a stark contrast to inner shadows. Pedestrians bustled, women in floral dresses clutching shopping bags, men in fedoras tipping hats, the normalcy of facade over historical rot. Margaret drove west, impulse guiding her along Ashley River Road, winding past marshes where egrets stalked like spectral guardians, the air humming with insects, Spanish moss dangling like nooses from ancient oaks. Fairmont called, a spiritual pilgrimage to confront ancestral demons. She'd never visited, her father's tales romanticized, lost elegance, silver services tarnished, balls under chandeliers. Now, it loomed as a site of bondage, where whips cracked and families fractured. Culminating in three souls' agonizing end. Stopping at a ramshackle country store, wooden planks weathered gray, screen door creaking, she queried the proprietor, an old man with tobacco-stained teeth and eyes squinting through cataracts. Fairmont? Aye, out Hammond Way. Scattered now, farms mostly. Directions scribbled on a napkin, she pressed on, pines whispering secrets, soybean fields rippling like uneasy seas, farmhouses squat and unassuming. Hammond Road, dirt lane rutted by rains, dust clouding her wake. An old farmhouse emerged, clapboard faded, porch sagging under vine weight. Beyond, a man tilled soil, his tractors rumble a modern intrusion on hallowed ground. She approached, skirt hem catching burrs, the earth soft underfoot, red clay clinging like bloodstains. He paused, wiping sweat with a bandana, 60s weathered skin etched by sun, ice kind yet wary. Help you, ma'am? I'm seeking Fairmont, the old plantation. My family. Howells, owned it pre-war. Honesty spilled, a confessional urge. His face shifted, guarded, like a door half closed. Name's Henry Davidson. Granddad bought it 69. Tore down the ruins, built anew. Davidson, the inquiry's echo. Chills prickled despite the heat. What of the old? Barns, sheds, cellars? He hesitated, gaze flicking to the horizon where pines met sky. Why dig, miss? Past's buried for reason. But her plea, not accusing, just seeking truth, softened him. Gloves off, he sighed. All right, but stays here. No dragging names through mud. A story unfolded, 1872, inquisitors from town, grandfather's mood soured. Dug barn rubble hours, then burned planks, fabric clothing, in a pit under starlit sky. Boy Henry watched, questioned, rebuked. And a donation to sheriff, generous, Pa said. For community, but wondered. Bribery's shadow, aligning with Eleanor's hints. Spiritual weight pressed, Proverbs 28 verse 13, whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. Had Davidson's kin concealed for gain? And the seven? Their fates? He shook head. Talk was, some died soon after. Accidents, fevers. Others vanished. No coincidence, folks whispered. Legs weak, Margaret retreated to her car, engines per a temporary salve. 3 witnesses dead suspiciously, implications of retribution, vigilante justice cloaked in night. Divine or demonic? The drive back blurred, tears stinging, empathy for victims, dread of inherited curse. Weeks blurred into obsession, libraries hushed aisles, where lamplight pooled on tables scarred by pens, historical societies stacks, air heavy with vanilla paper scent, county offices fluorescent glare. Census rolls unspooled lives. Benjamin Cook, born enslaved 1838, sharecropper postwar, wed marry, 2 children. Death, June 18, 1872, drowning, accidental in creek shallows. Mary, August 9, fever, sparse notes. Elias Grant, nomadic laborer, October 12, cotton gin mishap, lingered in agony. 3 gone in months, coincidence? Or silenced tongues? Susanna Gray, 1870, census domestic, then void, no trace, as if swallowed by earth. Thomas Perry, lingered to 1873, prolonged illness. Rachel Perry, evaporated like mist. Samuel Porter, persisted to 1881, but from 73, mute laborer, almshouse register, deaf and mute, unable to communicate. A voice stolen? Violence's mark, chilling as Cain's curse. Margaret's nights haunted, visions of 7 gathering at Mount Pleasant, steeple silhouetted against twilight, Reverend Tilden's baritone rallying. Photo session, stiff poses, wind-rustling dresses, eyes fierce with purpose. Then backlash, shadowy figures in night, ropes, poisons, blades. Psychological torment, guilt's erosion on survivors, muteness a living tomb. Spiritual layers deepened, their act a prophetic witness, like Jeremiah's cries ignored. Redemption's call, might exposing heal? Or damn? Curiosity burned, reflection profound, her role in this chain? Empathy for descendants, perhaps living echoes. The search intensified, a quest for living threads to weave justice's tapestry. In Charleston's twilight, as street lamps flickered like vigilant eyes, Margaret pondered divine retribution's slow grind, mills of God grinding exceeding fine. The past, unquiet, demanded heirs. The afternoon sun slanted through the lace-curtained windows of Margaret Howell's King Street townhouse, casting fractured patterns on the polished oak table where the sepia photograph lay like a relic unearthed from sacred ground. It was mid-May 1952, the air outside humming with the lazy drone of bees amid blooming dogwoods, their petals scattering like fleeting prayers on the breeze. Inside, however, the atmosphere thickened with the weight of revelation, dust motes suspended in golden beams, the faint scent of aged paper mingling with the bitter aroma of Margaret's untouched coffee. Her hands, steady from years of chalkboard diagrams and grading essays, now trembled as she traced the names from her notes: Benjamin Cook, Mary Cook, Elias Grant, Susanna Gray, Thomas Perry, Rachel Perry, Samuel Porter. These weren't mere entries in dusty ledgers, they were souls bound by shared trauma, their fates a tapestry of accidents that reeked of orchestrated silence. Spiritual unease gnawed at her, Proverbs 24 verse 12 whispering in her mind, "If you say, Behold, we did not know this, does not he who weighs the heart perceive it?" The 7 had known, had spoken, and paid eternally. Now, their descendants might hold the final threads, a chance for redemption or further damnation. Margaret's quest had evolved from curiosity to compulsion, a pilgrimage through the moral wilderness of her lineage. The photographs' faces haunted her dreams, eyes piercing like divine scrutiny, expressions frozen in eternal testimony. To surpass silence, she needed living voices, echoes of the oppressed, perhaps bearing the scars of inherited injustice. Starting with the Cooks, whose records gleamed clearest in the archives like beacons in fog, she delved into birth certificates, marriage ledgers, and census rolls at the Charleston County Records Office. The room was a vault of history, high ceilings echoing with the shuffle of pages, fluorescent lights buzzing like judgmental insects, shelves groaning under bound volumes that smelled of mildew and forgotten oaths. 3 days blurred, mornings teaching fractions to wide-eyed 5th graders, afternoons lost in yellowed scripts. Then, a breakthrough: Robert Cook, 74, North Charleston resident per the 1950 census, born circa 1876 in Charleston County. Calculations raced: son of Benjamin and Mary's child? Grandson, perhaps, a living link to the abyss. The drive to North Charleston unfolded under a canopy of live oaks, their branches arching like cathedral vaults, Spanish moss swaying as if mourning the passage of souls. The neighborhood sprawled modest and weathered, shotgun houses with peeling paint, porches sagging under potted geraniums, the air carrying the earthy tang of turned soil from backyard gardens. Children played hopscotch on cracked sidewalks, their laughter a stark counterpoint to Margaret's mounting dread. At the address, a bungalow with faded blue shutters and a creaking screen door, her knock echoed hollowly. Footsteps approached, deliberate and wary. The door opened to reveal an elderly black man, gray hair cropped close, eyes deep-set and fatigued, lines etched by decades of labor and quiet endurance. "Can I help you, ma'am?" His voice was gravelly, laced with the cautious politeness born of a lifetime navigating uneven grounds. "Mr. Cook? Robert Cook?" Margaret's words emerged measured, her teacher's poise masking inner turmoil. She introduced herself, weaving a careful narrative, family history research, a discovered photograph possibly tied to his kin. From her purse, she withdrew the image, its cardboard edges worn soft by time. Robert's gaze locked on it, color draining from his face like blood from a wound. He stared, unblinking, the room's silence broken only by a ticking wall clock. Emotions flickered, sorrow pooling like shadows at dusk, anger simmering beneath, resignation settling like dust. "Where'd you get this?" His whisper carried the weight of unearthed graves. "Hidden in my grandmother's wall. Found it weeks ago." She paused, breath shallow. "Are these your grandparents?" A slow nod, his finger pointing to the tall man and round-faced woman. "Benjamin and Mary Cook. My grandparents. Gone before I drew breath. But Pa told me about 'em." His eyes met hers, probing for intent. "What did he say?" Margaret's voice softened, an invitation to unburden. Hesitation lingered, then he stepped aside. "Best come in." The living room enveloped them, faded floral wallpaper, family photos in mismatched frames crowding a mantel, smiling children, wedding portraits, a sepia ancestor gazing sternly. Worn armchairs flanked a coffee table scarred by years, the air scented with chamomile from a simmering kettle. Robert brewed tea, steam rising like incense, and settled opposite her. His hands, gnarled from manual toil, cradled the cup as he began, voice rhythmic, pauses heavy with reflection. "Pa was but 4 when they passed. Raised by Aunt Lila, Mary's sister. When he grew, she spilled the tale. Said Benjamin and Mary aimed high, brave fools, seek injustice for war's horrors. 3 souls, Marcus, Joseph, Dinah. Locked in a root cellar for runnin'. Plantation boss, your kin, I reckon, chained 'em and fled Sherman's fire. Weeks later, returned to bones. My grands found 'em, with 5 others. Stench of death, bodies twisted in agony." Robert's gaze drifted, as if reliving the spectral scene, damp earth walls slick with mold, iron chains rusted, faint scratches on wood like desperate. "Please." Spiritual chill deepened, Job 34 verse 22, there is no gloom or deep darkness where evildoers may hide themselves. Yet they had hidden, and prospered. Years on, in 72, they spoke up. Marched to the sheriff with Reverend Tilden. Truth poured out. But nothing. Inquiry shut like a tomb. Howell folk denied, called 'em liars. His voice cracked, teacup trembling. Then death came Callan. Granddad drowned, strong swimmer, creek shallow. Grandma fevered quick. Others vanished, accidents pillin' like leaves in fall. Aunt Lila swore poison hands at work, powerful folk garden secrets. Who? Margaret whispered, dread coiling like a serpent in Eden. Robert's eyes hardened, steady as judgment. No names, but clear ties to the Plantation clan. Folks with pulled sheriffs, donors, shadows in night. Silenced whispers without touch in a hair. Shame crashed over Margaret, a deluge of inherited sin. Her great-grandfather's act, murder by neglect, souls forsaken in darkness mirroring Judas's betrayal. Then the cover-up, family orchestration, witnesses eradicated like weeds from a garden of lies. Empathy surged for Robert, his lineage's cross, carried silently. "Mr. Cook," she faltered, voice quivering, "I'm profoundly sorry. Can't mend the past, but I believe them. I'll unearth every shard. A sad smile creased his face, wise and weary. Appreciate it, Miss Howell. But Pa said, past's a ghost. Wrongdoer's dust. Justice slept then, won't wake now. Remember, that's our bomb. Honor those who dared, paid dear. Keep names alive, lest sin wins eternal. Tears blurred her vision as she departed, the bungalow receding in her rearview like a fading apparition. The drive home stretched eternal, sun dipping crimson, painting the Ashley River blood-red, oaks. Whispering accusations. By King Street's lamplight flicker, resolve crystallized a spiritual mandate to probe deeper, expose the silencer's machinations. Biblical echoes resounded, Amos 5 verse 24, let justice roll down like waters. But whose waters? Redemption's flood, or retribution's storm? The investigation darkened, shadows lengthening like twilight over Charleston steeples. Margaret turned to the architects of oblivion, Sheriff James Rutherford, inquiries hasty closer. Newspaper archives at the library yielded clues, microfilm whirring under dim bulbs, headlines yellowed like jaundiced skin. July 1872, mere weeks post-closure, Rutherford acquired a prime downtown edifice, far beyond his badge's wage. No scandal then, but now, bribery's fingerprint. Campaign ledgers revealed L.H. Louisa Howell, donating $50, a fortune equaling months of toil. Nadja roiled, her family hadn't merely denied, they'd bought burial for truth, perhaps commissioning deaths as one buys silence from a confessor. Curiosity burned hotter, reflection profound, guilt's psychological vice, squeezing souls across time. To identify Eleanor, Letter's compassionate scribe, Margaret returned to Dorothy at the Historical Society. Eleanor, close to Constance in 72. Involved in Freedmen's Aid, perhaps churches. Dorothy's eyes sparked, Reconstruction's missionary women, charity veils for influence. Ledgers emerged, Ladies' Relief Association, 1872 roster. Eleanor Waywright, daughter of Judge Marcus Waywright. Unwed, devoted to black schools, churches. Ties to Tilden? Likely. Hope surged, a thread to unravel the knot. Dorothy's calls bore fruit, Waywright papers at College of Charleston Library. Appointment set, Margaret entered the special collections room, hushed sanctity, air-conditioned crisp, gloves required for fragile tomes. 3 boxes, letters crisp as autumn leaves, diaries bound in cracked leather smelling of vanilla and thyme. Hours sifted, legal deeds, invitations faded. Then, Eleanor's diary, 1870 to 1880, handwriting matching the letter's grace. Pages turned with reverent care, ink faded yet vivid. January 15, 1872, visited Mount Pleasant today. Tilden's flock endures with grace amid scarcity. Their hope shames our complacency. February 3, Constance at tea burdened since father's passing, unspoken grief like a shroud. March 9, Constance's confession, father's deathbed admission, 3 perished in cellar, abandoned in war's panic. Torment consumes her, speak or seal? Tears welled, Constance's trust in Eleanor, a confessional bond. March 22, Tilden seeks advice, 7 congregants echo Constance's tale, witnessed Fairmont's horror, bodies discovered. Dare they accuse? April 11, they testified, Tilden beside. Prayers for justice, though shadows loom. April 24, arranged Waring's portrait, record their valor, lest erased. May 4, inquiry shuttered. Heartsick, Constance weeps, truth known yet denied. May 16, gave photo to Constance, reminder of unspoken truths. Darkness deepened, June 20, Benjamin drowned. Constance fears family hand, no proof, but suspicion festers. August 12, Mary gone, fever? Constance hysterical, witnesses hunted. October 15, Elias crushed. 3 slain, Constance isolates, letters coded. Later, 1873 vanishings, Porter's mutinous voice stolen, perhaps by blade or fear. 1881, Porter's end. 1885, saw Constance, photo hidden as memorial. Secrets die with us, cowards or guardians? Margaret closed the volume, library's silence amplifying her pulse. Eleanor and Constance, witnesses to silencing, paralyzed by fear. Psychological scars evident, guilt's erosion, like acid on stone. Spiritually chilling, divine justice deferred, but inevitable? Revelation 6:10's cry, "How long, O Lord?" Now, Margaret bore the mantle. Anxiety gripped the ensuing month, sleepless nights, bed linens twisted like ropes, classroom distractions, chalk snapping mid-lesson. The photo accused from the table, faces demanding atonement. Hypotheticals to friend Catherine, expose ancestral evil, or spare innocence. If dead, what's gained? Hurt descendants blameless. Unsatisfying Robert's-kin deserved validation, truth as balm for generational wounds. Curiosity piqued, more evidence? Dread mounted, family's damnation? Reflection stirred, her role in redemption's arc, breaking sin's cycle. In Charleston's moonlit streets, as fog rolled from the harbor like ghostly veils, Margaret pondered expose and invite divine light? Or bury, perpetuating darkness? The past, alive, hungered for resolution. The winter of 1954 descended on Charleston with a rare chill, the kind that seeped through the cracks of old townhouses and settled into bones like unconfessed guilt. Margaret Howell's King Street home stood quiet under gray skies, its yellow clapboard dulled by frost, black shutters closed against the wind that carried the distant toll of church bells from St. Michael's steeple. Inside, the parlor's heavy velvet curtains blocked the pale light, leaving the room in a perpetual twilight where shadows clung to Victorian furniture like lingering accusations. The air smelled of wood polish, old paper, and the faint, metallic tang of regret. Margaret, now 43, sat at the kitchen table, scarred oak surface worn smooth by generations of meals and mourning, staring at the sepia photograph that had upended her world. 7 faces gazed back, solemn, dignified, their eyes carrying the weight of unspoken testimony across 80 years. The moral crucible had intensified since her visits to Robert Cook and the revelations in Eleanor Waywright's diary. Nights blurred into sleepless vigils, the house creaking like a confessional booth, every groan a reminder of buried sins. She sought counsel from Martin Jennings, the elderly attorney who had settled her father's estate. His office on Meeting Street smelled of leather-bound law tomes and pipe tobacco, the walls lined with faded diplomas and portraits of stern forebears. Margaret spoke hypothetically, veiling names and specifics, yet the gravity of her words hung heavy. Martin leaned back in his creaking chair, spectacles glinting under the desk lamp's green shade. "Mrs. Howell," he said, voice measured as a judge's gavel, "legally, this is dust. Statutes of limitation expired generations ago. Perpetrators long dead, property transferred, witnesses' deaths impossible to prove as murder now. No remedy exists, no restitution, no trial." He paused, appraising her. "But history? Morality? That's yours alone. Go public, and your name becomes synonymous with atrocity. Your children inherit shame, not just blood. Many will call it betrayal, digging graves for no gain. Tread carefully." His words echoed as she drove home through streets lined with live oaks, their moss-draped branches swaying like mourning veils. Confusion gnawed, truth demanded utterance, yet exposure inflicted fresh wounds. The 7 deserved remembrance: Benjamin, Mary, Elias, Susanna, Thomas, Rachel, Samuel, their courage a beacon against darkness. But her children, innocent heirs, would bear the cross. Even the Davidsons, whose kin had raised evidence, might suffer collateral pain. One December evening, in Constance's former bedroom, now stripped to bare plaster, the cavity in the wall patched like a healed scar, clarity struck like revelation. Margaret sat on the floorboards, knees drawn up, the empty space before her a void once filled with secrets. Constance and Eleanor had faced this abyss: speak and shatter lives, or silence and preserve fragile peace. They chose concealment, yet preserved the record, photo hidden, letters penned, diary entries scribed. Not destruction, but deferral. They entrusted the future with the burden, hoping courage would arise in time. Margaret was that future. The realization washed over her like grace: she need not replicate their silence, nor rush to condemnation. A middle path beckoned to preserve, protect the living, release when harm lessened. Spiritual resonance deepened, Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1-8, a time to keep silent and a time to speak. Divine justice, patient as millennia, would unfold in its season. 3 weeks followed of meticulous labor, compiling death certificates yellowed with age, inquiry transcripts brittle as autumn leaves, diary excerpts copied in her precise hand, Robert's testimony transcribed, Henry's guarded words noted. The photograph, centerpiece, its subject's eyes seeming to follow her movements. All sealed in a metal box, sturdy as a reliquary. On December 12, 1954, under the kitchen's single bulb, Margaret wrote her letter. Ink flowed steady, each word a prayer. To whom it may concern, I am Margaret Howell, great-granddaughter of Charles Howell, owner of Fairmont Plantation. She detailed the discovery, research odyssey, horrors unearthed, 3 souls abandoned in darkness, starvation's slow crucifixion, 7 witnesses rising in courage, only to face erasured drownings, fevers, accidents, muteness imposed. The cover-up, denials, bribes, destruction. Constance and Eleanor's torment, their compromise. Her dilemma poured forth, public revelation would crucify innocence, children shadowed by ancestral sin, families torn anew. Silence perpetuated complicity, erased valor. Thus, the path, seal all until her passing. Deposit in bank vault, instructions clear, delivered to Charleston Historical Society posthumously. Time would buffer harm, historians, descendants could judge. I compromise, she wrote, not from cowardice, but understanding, no perfect choice exists. I minimize harm while ensuring truth endures. Let Benjamin Cook, Mary Cook, Elias Grant, Susanna Gray, Thomas Perry, Rachel Perry, Samuel Porter be remembered, their bravery, their price. May God forgive my delay, may those 7 understand protection's necessity. I entrust this to the future. She sealed box and letter, drove to Charleston Bank and Trust. Voltaire chilled her skin as she handed it over, clerk's pen scratching instructions eternal. Homeward, relief mingled with ache, burden lightened, yet carried still. Years unfolded in quiet routine. Teaching became refuge, classroom chalk dust a bomb against inner shadows. Children grew, laughter filling rooms once haunted, college acceptances pinned to refrigerator like triumphs. Remarriage in 1960 to Thomas Brennan, gentle widower unaware of the vault's weight. She considered confession many times, words forming, then dissolving. How confess ancestral murder, orchestrated silencing? The secret became solitary cross, born alone. 1980s brought frailty, heart disease, family's hereditary thief, stealing breath gradually. By 1987, doctors spoke in hushed tones of limited time. Margaret revisited the decision in solitude, lamplight pooling on her desk. In March 1989, months before end, she added final letter, old now, facing eternity. Still uncertain, was prudence cowardice? Protected my own, yet prolonged injustice. Wonder if the 7 forgive my delay. But I preserve truth, it will emerge. Reader, weigh cost of revelation, value of memory. Decide wisely. Margaret Howell Brennan, March 15, 1989. She died July 22, 1989, aged 78. Funeral at St. Philip's, pews filled with former pupils, colleagues, kin. Obituary lauded educator, community pillar, no whisper of Fairmont, no echo of hidden faces. 3 months later, executor retrieved box per will. October 1989, Charleston Historical Society received it. Director Dr. Patricia Williams, historian of Reconstruction, Black woman whose scholarship illuminated shadowed eras, opened it in archive's quiet room. Documents spilled forth, photographs solemn gaze, letters faded ink, Margaret's measured prose. Significance dawned immediate, Reconstruction's raw wound, silenced voices rising. 6 months verification, cross-referencing records, descendant interviews, ethicist consultations. April 1990, 118 years post-inquiry, press conference. National headlines, photograph reproduced, debates ignited. Howell descendants recoiled, denial, regretful statements. Praise and criticism for Margaret. Margaret's delay. Most poignant, descendants of 7 located Robert Cook's son, Margaret Perry's great-grandson, kin of Elias, Susanna. Invited to Charleston, May 3, 1991, 119 years after closure. At rebuilt Mount Pleasant AME Church, simple wooden structure echoing original's humble steeple, congregation's hymns rising like liberation's chorus. Over 300 gathered, speeches resonant, prayers fervent, spiritual swelling. Names read aloud: witnesses and victims, Marcus, Joseph, Dinah. Framed photos presented, tears flowing. Dr. Williams announced permanent exhibit, Voices of Conscience, 7 witnesses and the cost of truth. Photograph, letters, diary excerpts, inquiry documents, testament to courage's price. Most contentious, historical marker at former Fairmont site, now County Park. Granite, bronze plaque, in memory of Marcus, Joseph, and Dinah, who perished here January-February 1865. In memory of Benjamin Cook, Mary Cook, Elias Grant, Susanna Gray, Thomas Perry, Rachel Perry, and Samuel Porter, who bore witness and paid dearly. May their voices finally be heard. Protests flared: old families outrage, letters decrying unproven claims, failed lawsuit. Controversy faded, marker endured. School tours paused there, children tracing inscribed names. Annual May 3rd gatherings, descendants honor ancestors, prayers mingling with wind through pines. Photograph resides at Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture, College of Charleston, preserved, digitized, accessible. Viewers see beyond sepia, courage incarnate, determination etched in posture, dignity defying technology's limits. Margaret's compromise invites reflection: right to delay? Immediate exposure, cost be damned? Or preservation's wisdom? No easy verdict. Yet truth survived: without her investigation, documentation, deferral, story lost forever. Constance's secret died with her, names forgotten. Instead, preserved. Voices, silenced 1872, heard 1990, centuries delay, yet heard. The past refuses burial. Truth surfaces, patient as divine mills. 7 tried speaking, silenced, yet story endured. Now, heard. In Charleston's twilight, under moss-draped oaks, their legacy whispers: courage outlasts fear, justice, though delayed, prevails. What would you choose? The dilemma endures, a mirror for souls.